Welcome everyone to the September 2022 Adaptive Cards monthly community call. As a reminder, these calls are hosted every second Thursday of the month. In today's call, we're going to talk about the accessibility features that are available in Adaptive Cards. We're also going to talk about some new video sources that were added to the media element, and then we can hop into the Q&A section. So the accessibility features in Adaptive Cards. A couple of points of why accessibility is important. It's typically something that people overlook when they're coding their adaptive cards or when they're trying to share different cards across Teams or Outlook, but it's actually something that's very important. And the reasons why we in adaptive cards as well try to heavily emphasize accessibility and have been making lots of accessibility improvements in our product is because this ensures that the adaptive cards are accessible to all the potential users that might use these cards. It also provides users that might have a disability a decent user experience, and it overall improves the usability of the content. And the features that we have available today for accessibility in adaptive cards are shown in this slide. We have Speak, which is set at the adaptive cards level. This is for the whole adaptive cards, and it'll specify what should be spoken by the narrator to describe the entire adaptive card that is displayed. We also have altText, which is typically used for images or videos. In this case, it would be either an image or the media element that we have in adaptive cards. And it serves to describe the image or video using text, which is also read by the narrator. In version 1.5, which was shipped in October, we also included tooltip for actions. And this also defines text that card authors can use to further explain what this action is intended to do. And it'll also appear when a user hovers over the action with their mouse. We have label, which was introduced in version 1.3, which is used to tag inputs. And then our most recent addition to accessibility tools in adaptive cards has been CaptionSource. This is still in preview and will be coming in our 1.6 release. And it allows users to define closed captions for the media element. So in this case, videos. And it's currently available only in UWP and JavaScript. Getting into the new video sources that are available for media element. For those that might be unfamiliar with the media element, this is a card element that's used in adaptive cards to display things like videos. And it'll show the video right in the adaptive card. And I'll get into a demo right after showing the video sources that were added. Previously, the media element only supported videos that were hosted either on the site in forms of MP4. And I even think in one of our previous community calls, probably around March, we had someone that demoed how you can get support for YouTube videos. Well, now this is provided out of box with adaptive cards in our latest version 1.6. And we've added support for the media element to have inline video support for YouTube, Vimeo, and Dailymotion. And this is also where caption sources are used in this new version. So without further ado, let me jump into a demo where I'll show these accessibility features that I was referring to, and we can also show the media elements that were described. Before jumping into the card payload, we can quickly hop into the Schema Explorer where we can see the caption source was recently added and it's listed as a preview feature. It highlights all the different properties that are included for caption source and how you can go ahead and use them. And over here in the designer, I've made this demo adaptive card, which includes two videos. This is the video that has caption sources on it. And then this is the inline YouTube video player that I was referring to as a new source for media elements. If we go ahead and open up the narrator, which you can do by hitting the Windows key, Control, and Enter. Not too sure how you launch it on Mac, but if you're able to hear, the narrator right now is trying to describe the whole web page. If we travel all the way into the adaptive card, we should start hearing.
This is a demo adaptive card for the September 2022 community call.
So that right there was what I set for the speak at the adaptive card level. So what it just read right now was adaptive card for September 2022 community call demo. That's set at the adaptive card level as I explained previously, and it's set by this speak tag right here. This video that we have right here, if we go ahead and play
Content is currency,
you'll be able to
and
see
the driving force
if you
behind
turn them
successful
on here.
apps and experiences. But it's becoming harder for businesses to keep pace in a vast world of innovative content. Adaptive cards provide a flexible JSON-based schema that's beautiful by default, empowering you to be open
if you
to
were
any
able to
content.
see here, we'll go ahead and mute the video so it doesn't get annoying. You can see the captions right there at the bottom. So it says test 1, test 2, and these captions, they're specified within this caption sources array. And the URL is where you would have your captions posted. In this case, it's only a test, but if you know how to work with captions, you would be able to list out the captions for the entire video and include that as well. We can see here that the tooltip that I was referring to shows up when I hover over the share video. This will also be read by the narrator if I were to select that element within the narrator. It shows click here to share this video. We go over to the card payload. We can see that this is the tooltip property, which was added to the action.submit for the share video action. Finally, the YouTube video player that we have here. As mentioned before, this was previously not available. You could only have videos like these, which were hosted in MP4 format, but now you can use videos from YouTube, Vimeo, or Dailymotion inside your adaptive cards. And the good thing about these is that they have support for closed captions already. So these are the ones that YouTube provides within the video. This is just the August community call inside the adaptive card that I went ahead and added here for demo purposes. Finally here, for the image that we have up here, I went ahead and included the altText field, which I referred to. You can see it here. The altText, this is what's going to describe the image with the narrator. It's going to be red, and it says Microsoft logo animated fading in and out. This is actually an SVG image that's animated within an adaptive card. This was shared in a previous community call, and I'll share more details on that because I thought it was super cool. I actually did not know that we had support for this, but it's super cool because it enables a lot of different scenarios. Right now, we just have the Microsoft logo fading in and out, but one could imagine something like a progress indicator animated SVG, which is also possible with this. So that's everything for the adaptive cards demo. Let me go ahead and share the presentation again. If you want to learn more about the animated SVGs, steps to get this to work were shared in the Microsoft 365 Power Platform community call that was posted on the 1st of this month. The presenter was Christine. She was the one who animated the SVG and provided all the steps to get this to work. The demo happens around the 34-minute mark and lasts all the way to the 48-minute mark. And I'll go ahead and share the link to this call in the chat as well so people can reference it. And if you would like to learn more about Christine and the work she does, I added the Twitter here as well. But that is everything for the call that we have this month. We can expect another beta release of the version 1.6 coming next week. And we're also going to be making updates to the website to reflect these changes that are coming soon. And we can go ahead and jump into the Q&A section if anyone has any questions. I'll go ahead and share my links in the chat while we wait for questions. Feel free to either type the questions in chat or go off mute. Pablo asks, I would like to build an adaptive card that creates a dynamic URL link based on an Active Directory attribute. For example, my facility, it would pull the facility attribute from the current user AD and then create a clickable link that would send them to the website for their facility. I have been able to get the facility info using a REST call. Just curious if anyone has tried something like this or if this can be done with an adaptive card. Pablo, I think if I'm understanding your scenario correctly, this should be achievable with something or with the latest addition to Power Automate, which can listen to responses for adaptive cards and then update the adaptive card dynamically as well. I think this would be able to help with the dynamic URL that you're trying to send based on a condition here. And Pablo, I've gone ahead and sent the link to the community call that we hosted in May, which included information on this connector. And hopefully that helps. And if that does not help, you can reach out to me on Twitter at JPThePM, and I can follow up there with you to help if you need more help on that. Alexander is asking, when can we expect components? Let me see the link here. Adaptive components. I do not think we have a date right now for adaptive components. It's not something that we as a team are making changes on right now. I don't think it's something that we won't be working on, but just in the time frame that we're working on right now, we're focused on getting version 1.6 out the door and also enabling widgets with adaptive cards, which we shared in a previous call. And next month in October, we will have more details that we can share on widgets being supported by adaptive cards as well. That's going to be a very exciting community call. It'll show folks how, if you have an app, you can get your widget posted in the Windows 11 widgets board using adaptive cards. Patrick is asking, using the adaptive card option for the PNP search result web part, is it possible to style it to display in a grid layout with X columns per row with a card per column? How would this be done? Patrick, we actually have support for a table element in adaptive cards. This was introduced in version 1.5, and this does exactly what you're describing here. You can specify how many rows, how many columns it has, and then what elements appear in each of those rows or columns. I'm not sure about the PNP search result web part. I don't think I'm familiar with that, but in adaptive cards, it is something that we support already. Ryan asks, is there a low-code way to work with universal actions, or is writing a bot still required? Depends on what you want to use universal actions for, Ryan. I know the Power Automate allows users to sort of have a low-code way of implementing universal actions across Outlook and Teams, but in the backend, they still use bots for this. John is asking, is version 1.5 supported in Microsoft Teams? Let me double check on that so I don't provide wrong information. So Teams right now supports 1.4. They are not yet on 1.5. Alexander is asking, what is Codename Berlin? That's a great question. I'll be happy to answer it next month once we provide more information. I know you can use tables, but it just displays the same card. Wasn't sure how to get the next data item. Oh, I see. If you're asking about how to get specific items from an array in your data template, is that the right question, or am I understanding it incorrectly? Are you trying to iterate over an array of items inside your data payload? Okay, let me share. I actually ran into this issue yesterday, so let me share an example in the chat for how you can go ahead and do that. This is going to make me look like I'm prepared, which I am totally not. I just happened to run into this issue yesterday, and I made a quick example to demonstrate how this can be done. So in the chat, I went ahead and shared a card layout and then also a card data payload that shows you how you can go ahead and access specific items from an array or a certain number of n items from your data payload. If you pop that into the designer, you should be able to see, and if you have any more questions on that, I can also help. No problem, Patrick. I really hope that helps. If anyone has any question that they want to ask over voice, feel free to go off mute and ask your question.
Hey, this is Brian. Do you guys have or does anybody have a set of kind of recommended cards when people are first going into and turning Viva on? I mean, I know the Connections only has a few out of the box ones. I'm kind of struggling to find some good examples that I can give to some of my clients and everything. That's kind of a light lift for me, but gets good value for them. Have you found any good examples from that? Or
I actually think the Viva Connection samples that we have for adaptive cards are some of the best samples that I've seen. In one of the previous calls where we had Viva Connections on, they actually showed these samples, and looking at sort of the UI that they were able to create with adaptive cards, and it really showed how they were able to push adaptive cards to its limits and show all the content that they want. I know that within Viva Connections itself, when you're trying to create a new card, they include these samples. Are you saying that those samples are not what you were looking for, or were you looking at different samples?
No, I'm referring to those ones, but I guess I'm looking for a way to make them dynamic. Like I've heard some of those questions here, and you referred to even like Power Automate and things like that. You know, what's the best way to get those calls in and make them, because they're slick looking, but then the time for development and stuff to kind of customize them, that's the kind of differentiator. So, you know what I mean? I'm kind of looking for like the weather one. Like you take it from there, it's a static card. You know what I mean? It's not gathering your geolocation and things like that. So
I see.
Taking those that next step. Yeah.
Yeah. I know that, well, one of the new features that they recently added was they used extensibility to implement their own version of a file upload control. I know that's not really what you were looking for, but it's just one of the ways that Viva Connections is using adaptive cards and sort of building on top of it. As far as the logic that goes into making the card dynamic, I haven't personally used Viva Connections in the past. I just am familiar with the samples that they have. So I don't know how in the back end you can get those cards to update dynamically. I do know it should be possible because it's something that it's sort of the value prop of their product is having this dashboard for a company or a group of people where you can have different content displayed. And I'm sure that it is possible. I just don't have the information right now for you. Viva Connections will be on our community call next month as well. They'll be showing this file upload control that I described. And I think it'd be a great place to ask this question to the experts that actually work on Viva Connections. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to help you much, Brian.
No, this is great dialogue. So, and maybe to that point, and I don't want to take the conversation sideways if other people have questions, but I'm more of a SharePoint guy, so I instantly think of Connections, adaptive cards. Am I thinking about it in too small of a context, maybe?
Can you repeat that? So you're more of a SharePoint guy. You think of adaptive cards in what context?
Like Connections, which is inside the intranet, you know, on the Viva Connections page, adaptive card piece of functionality. That in my mind, I guess, is how I see the adaptive cards. Am I thinking of it as too narrow of a use case? Like, should I be thinking about it in different locations and things like that? Like, where are other value areas for it?
Yeah, I think the main goal, the main problem that adaptive cards was trying to solve when it was created was having shared UX UI in multiple different platforms. So it's not really building your app with adaptive cards or building the entire UI of your app with adaptive cards. It's more of within your app having adaptive cards that can be used in different apps as well. So any app, in this case, Viva Connections is the host app that consumes our SDKs, consumes adaptive cards. You can have an adaptive card shown there, and they can specify how it looks and how it feels within their host app using things like the host config and different setups that way. But adaptive cards is really meant to be UI that can be shared across multiple apps, across multiple platforms, without needing to be the framework that builds your entire app, if that makes sense. I think you are thinking about it in the right way. The adaptive card that you see in SharePoint should be similar enough to the adaptive card that you see on Teams or that you see in Outlook. There might be some differences in terms of the features that they support based on the version of our schema that they support, but in general, they should be similar.
Cool. Hey, thank you so much. Very informative.
No problem, Brian. Hope that helps. Alexander is asking, are there any plans to have an iOS SDK for the Swift language? I don't think we have plans for that right now, Alexander. I think there might be a community-driven SDK for this, but I might be mistaken. I might be confusing a different type of SDK. I do know we have the React Native renderer, which was the call we hosted last month. But as of right now, the team does not have any plans on supporting Swift for an iOS SDK. Jackson is asking, try pasting the above example into AdaptiveCards.io, which host app supports version 1.5. You can go ahead and just switch the version on the payload there, or within the tab. Let me see here. If you go on the designer and then you see the target version at the top right, it'll say target version 1.5. The warning at the bottom, it's just a warning. It doesn't mean that the feature or the functionality of the card that I share is not working. It's more of a warning to let the user know that this card might not work within that host app that's being used. In this case, the default one is the Bot Framework web chat. But the specific cards that I share don't use any features that are not available. It only has a fact set, and that's been available for a really long time. So it's not a feature that's specific to version 1.5. Yeah, and in that example that I shared, you can see that there's a line that says data take top cities 1, and it's conditional. So if you set single item to true, it'll show multiple items, and it'll take the top 2 cities with that take function. That'll allow you to pick how many items within an object array in your data payload you want to display in your adaptive card. Is Fabric UI integration for the JavaScript SDK open source? I'm not too sure, Alexander, on that one. Travis, on the comment of good value from putting adaptive cards into Teams or emails, I think it's really beneficial, especially ever since Power Automate added that listen for adaptive card responses and then dynamically update the card. That enables a ton of scenarios. It could be something where you send an adaptive card to a Teams channel and you're only looking for one reply. And when a user replies, since your adaptive card is listening, it's using the connector to listen for a response. Then after taking the first response, you can gather information like which user was the one who responded to the card and lock the response after that if it's something that only requires one response. And you can also edit it to be different things like reminders or work items, expense approvals. It's really powerful how much you can do now that those connectors were added to Power Automate. Yep, Tomas has excellent videos on these connectors and overall everything adaptive cards related. He does a great job. When I was actually onboarding to the adaptive cards team, I used a ton of his content to help me onboard to the adaptive cards team as well. If anyone has questions that they weren't able to get answered in this call and would like a follow-up on, feel free to shoot me a message on Twitter. I'll check it out and try to get an answer to you as quickly as possible. I want to make sure that everyone gets their questions answered. And if I don't have the answer to a question right now, I should be able to reach out to the people that do. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining the September Adaptive Cards community call. We will be live again next month. The date is October 13th. We have a very exciting community call coming up for next month. So super happy to share that once we get there. If you're looking for more resources for adaptive cards, you can find things like our roadmap, information on templating, and our open source repository with the ak.ms short links in this slide. For tools, sample cards, and more information about adaptive cards as well, you can go over to madewithcards.io. And we encourage you to attend, if you can, the other Microsoft 365 developer community calls. As I mentioned in one of the previous slides, there was a presentation on how to animate SVGs in adaptive cards in one of the Power Platform community calls that was hosted earlier this month. Here you can find the short links to get the invites for these calls, as well as the cadence for each of these calls. And yep, thank you everyone for attending.